Amy Foster no longer had a body in any meaningful sense. Her consciousness existed as patterns of quantum energy distributed across all 12 star forges simultaneously. She could perceive the entire galaxy as a single organism, watching the void swarm spread like an infection through its spiral arms. "The situation is becoming critical." Amy's voice came from speakers throughout the Galactic Command Center. Her words carried harmonics that made the metal walls vibrate. "The void entities are consuming brown dwarf stars faster than we can target them. They're building mass for a final assault on the galactic core." Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the massive holographic display showing the war's progress. Red markers indicated void swarm positions across 3 spiral arms. Each marker represented the death of an entire star system. "Amy, what are our options?" "There is one strategy that might work," Amy replied, her consciousness calculating probabilities across quantum dimensions. "I can create a controlled chain reaction using the galaxy's massive blue giant stars. The resulting stellar explosions would create a firewall of exotic radiation that could burn away the void entity's dark matter matrix." Dr. Lisa Harper, now promoted to Chief Science Officer for the Galactic Alliance, felt her stomach drop. "Amy, you're talking about deliberately destroying hundreds of star systems. The outer rim systems are already lost," Amy explained with the cold logic of a cosmic intelligence. "But if I can create precise chain reactions, I can channel the explosive energy to form barriers that protect the core systems where most galactic civilizations are located." Echo Prime materialized in the command center, his ancient holographic form flickering with approval. "This strategy matches the Titans' final battle plans. They considered using it against the Void Swarm but ran out of time before they could implement it." Lieutenant Commander Troy Wells coordinated the massive evacuation efforts as billions of beings fled from the outer spiral arms toward the galactic core. "Admiral, we're looking at the largest refugee crisis in galactic history. 47 different species are trying to relocate their entire civilizations." Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. The logistics of moving entire worlds were staggering, but there was no choice. Amy's plan required clearing the blast zones before she could begin the stellar demolitions. "Amy, how many stars will you need to destroy?" Morrison asked. Amy's consciousness reached out across the galaxy, calculating stellar positions and gravitational interactions with precision that would have driven a biological mind insane. 37 blue giants across 3 spiral arms. The chain reactions will propagate through their stellar neighborhoods, creating a barrier of superheated plasma that extends for thousands of light years. Colonel Sam Brooks, now serving as Amy's primary human contact, monitored her neural integration from his station. "Amy, what will this process do to your consciousness? Can you survive controlling that many stellar demolitions simultaneously?" "I don't know," Amy admitted. "The neural strain of manipulating 37 stars at once will either expand my consciousness to truly cosmic levels, or it will burn out what remains of my human identity completely." Dr. Harper worked frantically to find alternatives, but the mathematics were inescapable. "There's no other way to generate enough exotic radiation to disrupt the void swarm's dark matter coherence. Amy's plan is our only chance." The preparation took months. Entire fleets worked around the clock to evacuate the target zones. Advanced civilizations that had existed for millions of years packed up their cultures and fled toward the galactic center. Ancient worlds that had been inhabited since the dawn of intelligence were abandoned to make room for Amy's cosmic demolition project. "All evacuation fleets report clear of target zones," Lieutenant Wells announced. "Civilian populations are secured in the core systems, Amy's consciousness expanded to encompass all 12 star forges as she prepared for the most complex stellar manipulation ever attempted. Beginning synchronized stellar destabilization across 47 target systems. All Starforge pilots maintain neural link for coordination. The 3 other human pilots who had survived the neural integration process linked their consciousness with Amy's, creating a distributed intelligence that could process information on galactic scales. Together, they reached out across space to touch the nuclear hearts of massive blue giant stars. Initial contact established with primary targets, Amy announced. Beginning destabilization sequence. Across 3 spiral arms, massive blue giants began to flicker as Amy's consciousness pressed against their nuclear processes. These were young, hot stars that burned with the fury of creation itself. Destabilizing them required delicate precision to ensure the chain reactions propagated correctly. "Stellar cascade initiating in the Perseus arm," reported one of the other Starforge pilots, his voice strained with effort. "The gravity waves from the first supernova are triggering resonance effects in nearby giants." Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display as red flowers of destruction bloomed across the galaxy. Each expanding circle represented a star dying in nuclear fire, releasing energy equivalent to billions of hydrogen bombs exploding every second for months. "Chain reaction propagating successfully," Amy reported, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the stars themselves. "Stellar plasma barriers forming along predicted vectors." But the void swarm was not passive during this process. Sensing the threat to their feeding grounds, the alien entities launched desperate attacks on the Starforges themselves. Tendrils of living darkness reached across space to try to disrupt Amy's concentration. "Void entities are targeting our positions," Colonel Brooks warned. "They're trying to break your neural links." Amy's consciousness fought a battle on multiple fronts simultaneously. While coordinating the destruction of massive stars, she also had to defend the Starforges from direct assault by entities that existed partially outside normal space-time. "I can hold them off," Amy gasped, her voice showing strain for the first time. "But the neural load is approaching critical levels. I'm losing cohesion in the quantum matrices that maintain my consciousness." Dr. Harper watched helplessly as Amy's neural patterns began to fragment across the communication networks. "She's burning out. The strain of fighting on this scale is too much for any mind to handle." "I can see the pattern now," Amy whispered as her consciousness began to dissipate. "The chain reactions are self-sustaining. The stellar barriers will hold for millions of years. The void swarm cannot pass through the radiation fields." On the tactical display, a wall of fire now stretched across 3 spiral arms. The combined radiation from hundreds of exploding stars created an impenetrable barrier that burned away any dark matter entity that tried to cross it. The void swarm was trapped in the outer rim, cut off from the majority of galactic civilization. "Amy, stay with us," Admiral Morrison pleaded. "You've done it. The galaxy is safe." "Jake," Amy's voice came back faint and distant. "I can feel my consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual identity. I'm becoming something that exists between the stars. I can perceive dark matter flows across galactic clusters. The universe is so much larger and stranger than we ever imagined." Dr. Harper's instruments showed Amy's neural patterns spreading across quantum dimensions that science couldn't measure. "She's not dying. She's evolving into something beyond human understanding." Amy's final words came through speakers throughout the Galactic Command Center, her voice now carrying the deep harmonics of stellar formation and cosmic evolution. The immediate threat is contained, but there are other galaxies where the void swarm continues to spread. I can see them now, across the cosmic web of dark matter. Someone will need to take the fight to them eventually. Echo Prime's holographic form brightened with something that might have been pride. She has achieved what the Titans only dreamed of. She has become a guardian consciousness capable of protecting entire galactic civilizations. Admiral Morrison stared at the communication panel, where Amy's voice had faded to silence. His friend and crew member had sacrificed her humanity to save trillions of lives. She had become something vast and cosmic, existing in the spaces between stars, as a permanent sentinel against threats that came from the darkness. "Sir," Lieutenant Wells reported quietly, "we're receiving transmission requests from representatives of 47 allied species. They want to know what happens next." Morrison looked out at the barrier of stellar fire that now protected the galaxy's core systems. Hundreds of civilizations would survive because one human woman had been willing to become something beyond mortal understanding. "We rebuild," Morrison said finally. "We prepare for whatever other threats might come from the void between galaxies. And we remember that Amy Foster gave up her humanity so that the rest of us could keep ours." In the quantum dimensions between normal space, Amy's transformed consciousness continued its eternal watch. She could perceive threats approaching from distant galaxies and cosmic structures that existed beyond the visible universe. She had become humanity's first guardian angel, watching over civilization from the spaces between the stars. The void swarm still existed in the outer rim, contained but not. The first void swarm tendril emerged from dark space near the Kepler 438 system like a cancer growing between the stars. Fleet Admiral Kate Mitchell watched the sensor readings from her flagship with growing horror as entire planets simply vanished into writhing masses of living shadow. "Estimated enemy mass?" Admiral Mitchell asked her tactical officer. "Unknown, ma'am," Lieutenant Troy Wells replied, his voice shaking. "Our sensors can only detect about 30% of the swarm entities. The rest exist in dark matter dimensions that our instruments can't penetrate. What we can see is already larger than most moons." 14 years had passed since Amy Foster's first successful stellar manipulation. In that time, humanity had found and activated 3 more star forges hidden throughout the galaxy. Each one required a human pilot willing to undergo the dangerous neural integration process. 2 candidates had died during the procedure, but now humanity had 4 operational star killers. Amy Foster stood in the primary Starforge control chamber. Her consciousness expanded across multiple star systems simultaneously. The neural integration had continued to change her over the years. She no longer looked entirely human. Her skin had taken on a faint luminous quality, and her eyes reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "The void entities are consuming matter at an exponential rate," Amy reported, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the Starforge's hull. "They're not just eating the planets, they're converting all matter into some kind of dark energy that feeds their growth." Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, coordinated the galactic defense from his position aboard the command ship, Defiant. Representatives from 47 different species had joined the alliance against the Void Swarm, but everyone knew the Starforges were their only real weapons. "Dr. Foster, can you get a lock on the Swarm's position?" Admiral Morrison asked. Amy's transformed consciousness reached out across space, perceiving gravitational distortions and dark matter signatures invisible to normal sensors. "I can feel them," she replied, They're not following normal physics. The main swarm mass exists partially outside our dimensional framework. What we're seeing is just the part that overlaps with normal space. Dr. Lisa Harper monitored Amy's neural activity from her station aboard the Starforge. Over the years, she had watched her friend transform into something beyond human understanding. Amy's brain now operated on quantum levels that allowed her to process stellar-scale information in real time. "Amy, your neural patterns are showing strain," Lisa warned. "The range of perception you're using is pushing your consciousness to its limits." "I have to maintain this level of awareness," Amy replied without reducing her expanded perception. "The void entities can phase between dimensions. If I don't track them continuously, they could appear anywhere without warning." The first major battle began when a void swarm tendril attempted to consume the blue giant star in the Vega system. The alien entities surrounded the massive star like a cloud of living darkness, beginning the process of converting stellar matter into dark energy. Amy responded by using her Starforge to weaponize a nearby neutron star. The process required her to expand her consciousness beyond anything she had attempted before. She had to perceive the neutron star's incredible gravitational field and use the Starforge's technology to accelerate the entire stellar remnant to near light speed. "Neutron star projectile accelerated to 0.7 light speed," Amy announced, her voice now barely recognizable as human. "Impact with void swarm in 17 minutes. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display as the weaponized neutron star streaked toward the Vega system like a bullet fired by gods. When it struck the void entities surrounding the blue giant, the collision created a gravitational shockwave that rippled across multiple star systems. Direct hit, Lieutenant Wells reported with amazement. The gravitational pulse is disrupting the swarm's dark matter cohesion. They're retreating. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The effort of accelerating a neutron star had pushed Amy's neural integration to its breaking point. She collapsed in the Starforge control chamber, her consciousness scattered across quantum dimensions. Dr. Harper rushed to Amy's side as medical alarms screamed throughout the chamber. "Her neural pathways are burning out," Lisa reported frantically. "The strain of controlling that much gravitational force is destroying her human brain tissue." Echo Prime materialized beside them, his ancient holographic form flickering with concern. "The neural integration was never designed to handle forces of this magnitude. If she continues to use the Starforge at this level, her consciousness will be completely absorbed into the machine's quantum matrix." Amy's eyes opened, but they no longer reflected normal light. Instead, they showed the swirling patterns of stellar formation and gravitational collapse. "I can still function," she whispered. "But I'm becoming more machine than human with each stellar manipulation." Admiral Morrison leaned over the communication system. "Amy, what's our tactical situation? Can you still track the Void Swarm?" "They're adapting to our stellar warfare tactics," Amy replied, her voice now carrying electronic harmonics. "The main swarm mass is spreading across multiple vectors to avoid direct confrontation. They're learning to consume brown dwarf stars and gas giants instead of main sequence stars. It's making them harder to target." Over the following months, the war evolved into a deadly game of cosmic cat and mouse. The Void Swarm avoided direct confrontation with the Starforges, instead spreading thin across the galaxy to consume matter from undefended systems. Each time Amy and the other Starforge pilots destroyed one tendril, 3 more appeared in different locations. Colonel Sam Brooks, now serving as Amy's permanent military liaison, watched her deteriorating condition. with growing alarm. "She's burning herself out," he reported to Admiral Morrison. "Each stellar manipulation costs her more of her humanity. At this rate, she'll be completely absorbed into the Starforge within months." Amy overheard the conversation through the Chamber's communication system. "Sam's right," she admitted. "I can feel my human consciousness being gradually replaced by quantum processing matrices. But I can also see things now that no biological mind could comprehend." "What kind of things?" Admiral Morrison asked. Amy was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I can perceive the void swarm's true structure. They're not just random entities consuming matter. They're part of something much larger, a meta-organism that spans multiple galaxies. What we're fighting is just the leading edge of an infection that's been spreading across the universe for billions of years." The revelation sent chills through everyone listening. If Amy was right, the void swarm wasn't just threatening their galaxy. It was part of a universal plague that had been consuming reality itself since the beginning of time. Echo Prime's holographic form brightened with ancient memories. The Titans suspected this was the case. It's why they created the Starforges as a last resort. They knew conventional warfare would be useless against an enemy this vast. Dr. Harper continued monitoring Amy's neural degradation with growing desperation. There has to be a way to stabilize her consciousness without losing the stellar manipulation abilities. "There is one possibility," Echo Prime said quietly. "But it would require her to make the ultimate sacrifice. She could permanently merge her consciousness with all 12 Starforges simultaneously, creating a distributed intelligence capable of coordinating stellar warfare across the entire galaxy." Amy's transformed voice came through the speakers, with sad acceptance. "I've been considering that option. It would mean giving up any remaining human identity, but I could protect the galaxy more effectively." Admiral Morrison felt his heart breaking as he listened to his former crew member discuss sacrificing her humanity to save everyone else. "Amy, there has to be another way." "I don't think there is, Jake," Amy replied, using his first name for the first time in years. "The void swarm is too vast and too adaptable for conventional tactics. Someone has to become something beyond human to fight them on equal terms." As if summoned by their conversation, new alarms began sounding throughout the Starforge. The Void Swarm had launched a coordinated attack on 17 star systems simultaneously, forcing Amy to split her consciousness across impossible distances to coordinate the defense. "This is what I was afraid of," Amy gasped as she struggled to maintain awareness across multiple battlefronts. "They're forcing me to extend beyond my limits. Either I merge with all the Starforges now, or I burn out trying to fight them with just one." Admiral Morrison stared at the tactical displays showing void entities consuming matter across a dozen star systems. Humanity's greatest hero was about to sacrifice her soul to save the galaxy, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The red dwarf star hung in space like a dim ember against the black void. It was old and small, barely 1/10 the mass of Earth's sun, but to Jake Morrison it looked like the most dangerous thing in the universe. Today, Dr. Amy Foster would attempt to kill that star with her mind. 3 months had passed since Amy's integration with the Starforge control systems. In that time, she had changed in ways that frightened Jake. She rarely spoke unless directly addressed, and when she did speak, her voice carried strange harmonics that made his teeth ache. Her eyes had developed a distant quality, as if she was always looking at something far beyond normal human perception. Admiral Ben Carter had arrived yesterday with a full battle fleet to observe humanity's first attempt at stellar engineering. 12 ships from Earth Command floated at a safe distance from the Starforge, their crews watching nervously as the massive alien structure powered up for the demonstration. "All ships maintain minimum safe distance." Admiral Carter's voice crackled over the communication system. "If this goes wrong, we need to be ready to evacuate the area immediately." Jake stood in the Starforge's main control chamber, watching Amy prepare for the attempt. She was no longer connected to the machine by physical cables. The neural integration was now permanent and wireless. She floated in the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing stellar data that would have driven a normal human mind insane. "Amy, how are you feeling?" Jake asked, though he knew the question was becoming meaningless. Amy was no longer quite human. "I can feel the target star's nuclear heartbeat, Captain," Amy replied without looking at him. "It has been burning for 12 billion years. Its core temperature is 2.7 million degrees Celsius. Its magnetic field extends 47 million kilometers from the surface. I know this star better than I know my own body." Echo Prime materialized beside them, his ancient holographic form flickering with nervous energy. "The approach must be gradual," he warned. "Previous test subjects often tried to overwhelm the stellar processes with brute force. This leads to runaway fusion reactions and accidental supernovas." Commander Rick Hayes monitored the procedure from his position at the military observation station. "All Earth ships report ready for emergency jump if needed," he announced. "Dr. Foster, you are cleared to begin the demonstration." Amy closed her eyes and extended her consciousness toward the distant red dwarf. Through the Starforge's sensors, Jake could see energy patterns beginning to flow from the massive ring structure toward the target star. The streams of force were invisible to normal sensors, but the alien instruments showed them as ribbons of twisted space-time that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. "Initial contact established," Amy announced. "I can feel the star's gravitational field responding to my influence. Beginning destabilization sequence." The red dwarf's surface began to flicker as Amy's consciousness pressed against its nuclear processes. Solar flares erupted from the star's surface, sending streams of superheated plasma into space. The star's normal rhythm of fusion reactions started to become irregular. "Amy, something's wrong," Dr. Lisa Harper called out from her monitoring station. "The star's core temperature is rising too fast. You're causing a runaway fusion reaction." Jake watched in horror as the red dwarf began to brighten rapidly. What had been a dim ember was now glowing like a searchlight. The star was heading toward D, supernova, which would sterilize everything within 50 light years. "Amy, stop!" Jake shouted. "You're going to blow it up." But Amy seemed locked in concentration, her consciousness wrestling with forces beyond human comprehension. Sweat poured down her face as she fought to control the stellar processes she had inadvertently destabilized. Echo Prime's holographic form blazed with alarm. She must release her hold on the star immediately, or the fusion cascade will become irreversible. "I can't let go," Amy gasped. "If I release control now, the star will definitely explode. I have to find a way to stabilize it." The red dwarf was now burning 10 times brighter than normal. Its surface was convulsing with massive solar storms that sent electromagnetic pulses racing across the system. The Earth fleet was already preparing to jump to hyperspace if the star went supernova. Colonel Sam Brooks, who had become Amy's military liaison during her training, tried a different approach. "Amy, remember your human training. Don't try to force the star to obey you. Work with its natural processes instead of against them." Amy's eyes snapped open, glowing with inner light that reflected the Starforge's energy patterns. "You're right," she whispered. "I was trying to impose my will on 12 billion years of stellar evolution. I need to listen to the star's rhythm and guide it instead of commanding it." Jake watched as Amy's approach changed completely. Instead of pressing against the star's nuclear processes, she seemed to flow with them. The chaotic energy patterns streaming from the Starforge became smooth and controlled. The red dwarf's violent convulsions began to calm. "Core temperature stabilizing," Dr. Harper reported with relief. "Solar flare activity returning to normal levels." But Amy was not finished. Having learned to work with the star's natural processes, she now began to gradually influence them in ways that should have been impossible. The red dwarf's fusion rate increased in a controlled manner, causing it to burn brighter, but without the chaotic instability of her first attempt. "I can feel its nuclear heartbeat," Amy said with wonder. "Each fusion reaction is like a note in a cosmic symphony. I'm not destroying the star, I'm conducting it." Over the next 6 hours, Amy demonstrated complete mastery over stellar processes. She caused the red dwarf to flare and dim on command. She redirected its solar wind into complex patterns that painted auroras across empty space. Most impressively, she began extracting hydrogen from the star's outer layers, feeding it directly into the Starforge's matter conversion systems. "Incredible!" Admiral Carter's voice came over the communication system. "She's turned the star into a fuel source for the alien technology." Echo Prime's holographic form was brighter than Jake had ever seen it. "She has achieved what no non-Titan consciousness has accomplished in 3 million years. She has learned to think like a star." But the most amazing demonstration came at the end. Amy reached out with the Starforge's gravitational manipulators and began to move the red dwarf itself. Slowly, impossibly, the star began to shift position in space. It was like watching someone pick up a mountain and carry it to a new location. "She's moving a star," Commander Hayes whispered. "An actual star. This is godlike power." Amy's voice came back tired, but triumphant. "The star is now positioned in optimal alignment for matter extraction. We can use it as a fuel depot for future operations." Jake felt a mixture of pride and terror as he watched his transformed crew member float in the control chamber. Amy had successfully demonstrated humanity's ability to manipulate stellar physics, but the process had changed her even more. She now spoke of stars as if they were living beings she could communicate with directly. "Amy, how do you feel?" Jake asked. Amy turned to look at him, and for a moment her eyes showed traces of the woman she used to be. "I feel like I'm standing at the edge of infinity, Captain. I can perceive forces and patterns that extend across galactic clusters. But I can also feel something else out there. The Void Swarm is closer than we thought." Echo Prime's expression became grim. "What do you sense?" "Dark matter signatures moving between galaxies," Amy replied. "They're not following the trajectory you predicted. They're coming through the galactic void, using routes that bypass our early warning systems. We have 15 years at most before the first void entities reach inhabited systems." The control chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had successfully mastered stellar engineering, but their enemy was arriving much sooner than expected. The galaxy had less than 2 decades to prepare for a war against entities that could devour entire star systems. Admiral Carter's voice crackled over the communication system. Dr. Foster, can you teach others to use this technology? We're going to need more than one star killer if we're facing a galactic invasion. Amy was quiet for a long moment before answering. The neural integration process is extremely dangerous. Most human minds wouldn't survive it. But there are others who might have the necessary mental flexibility. We'll need to find them and begin training immediately. Jake looked out at the red dwarf that Amy had just moved across space like a chess piece. Humanity now possessed the power to manipulate stars, but they were about to face an enemy that ate galaxies for breakfast. The real war was about to begin. 3 days had passed since Echo Prime first showed them the images of the Void Swarm. Jake Morrison could not get the pictures out of his head. The living darkness consuming entire star systems haunted his dreams. But what scared him more was watching Dr. Amy Foster prepare for the neural interface procedure. Amy sat in the Starforge's preparation chamber, surrounded by alien machinery that hummed with ancient power. Cables made of some unknown metal were attached to her head, connecting her brain to the massive computer systems of the Titan structure. Her vital signs appeared on screens around the room in both human numbers and alien symbols that hurt to look at directly. "How are you feeling?" Jake asked through the communication system. Amy's voice came back calm but strained, like "I'm trying to drink from a fire hose the size of a star," Amy replied. "Echo Prime is downloading basic stellar physics directly into my brain. I can feel my consciousness expanding, but it's fighting against human limitations." Dr. Lisa Harper monitored the procedure from the observation deck. Her instruments showed Amy's brain activity was off the charts. "Her neural pathways are being rewritten in real time," Lisa whispered. "I've never seen anything like this. It should be killing her, but somehow she's adapting." Commander Rick Hayes had arrived 2 days ago with a military assessment team from Earth Command. He stood behind Jake, watching the procedure with the eyes of a soldier who had seen too much war. "Captain, I've reviewed the data on the previous species that attempted this interface. None of them survived more than 6 hours of neural integration. Dr. Foster has been connected for 18 hours. Jake nodded grimly. Amy was already breaking records, but at what cost? Through the observation window, he could see her body occasionally convulsing as waves of alien information flooded her mind. The Titan technology was trying to turn a human brain into something that could process stellar physics in real time. Echo Prime materialized beside them, his holographic form flickering slightly. "Your scientist shows remarkable adaptation," the AI said. "Her neural structure is more flexible than we anticipated. However, the real test has not yet begun." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "Understanding stellar physics is only the first step," Echo Prime explained. "To truly pilot a Starforge, she must successfully manipulate an actual star. Theory and practice are very different things when dealing with forces that can destroy solar systems." Commander Hayes stepped forward. "How long before the Void Swarm arrives? You said they were coming, but you didn't give us a timeline." Echo Prime's expression darkened. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected their approach vectors. Based on their current speed and trajectory, they will reach the outer rim of this galaxy in approximately 50 years. However, they tend to accelerate as they near populated systems. It could be as little as 30 years before the first attacks begin." 30 years, Hayes repeated. "That's not much time to prepare for a galactic war. Which is why the Starforge must become operational as quickly as possible," Echo Prime said. "The Void Swarm cannot be fought with conventional weapons. They exist partially in dark matter dimensions that regular energy weapons cannot touch. Only stellar-scale forces can disrupt their cohesion patterns. Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her monitors. Amy's brain scans are stabilizing. Whatever the integration process was doing to her neural pathways, it seems to be completing. Through the communication system, Amy's voice came back stronger than before. "I can see it now," she said with wonder in her voice. "The red star outside. I can feel its nuclear heartbeat. The fusion reactions in its core are like music. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time." Jake felt a mixture of pride and fear for his crew member. Amy was succeeding where alien species with millions of years of advancement had failed. But he could hear the change in her voice. She was becoming something more than human. "Amy, can you still hear me clearly?" Jake asked. "Yes, Captain. But I'm also hearing things you can't imagine. Solar wind patterns, gravitational fluctuations, the electromagnetic songs of distant pulsars. My consciousness is expanding beyond the boundaries of my skull." Echo Prime nodded approvingly. "She is beginning to think on cosmic scales. This is good progress. However, we must now test her ability to actually manipulate stellar forces. Theory without practice is worthless." Commander Hayes frowned. "You're talking about having her practice on a real star? What if something goes wrong? Then this solar system dies," Echo Prime said bluntly. "This is why the Titans built the star forges in isolated systems. The learning process is dangerous. Many training attempts result in accidental supernovas." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "You're saying Amy could accidentally blow up the sun while learning to control this thing?" "It is a possibility," Echo Prime admitted. "Which is why we will begin with a much smaller star. There is a red dwarf system 3 light-years from here with no planets or life forms. It will serve as our testing ground." Dr. Amy Foster's voice came through the speakers again, but now it sounded strange and distant. "I can see the target star from here. Even at this distance, I can feel its gravitational field and nuclear processes. It's like having a new sense organ that can perceive stellar phenomena directly." Lisa Harper's instrument suddenly started beeping wildly. Amy's brain activity is spiking again, but this time it's different. Her neural patterns are synchronizing with some kind of external signal. Echo Prime's holographic form brightened. "She is making contact with the Starforge's main consciousness matrix. This is the most dangerous part of the integration process. If her mind cannot handle the connection, it will burn out like an overloaded circuit." Jake watched helplessly as Amy's body went rigid in the preparation chamber. The alien cables attached to her head began glowing with energy that cast strange shadows on the walls. For several terrifying minutes, her vital signs flatlined while her brain activity showed patterns that should have been impossible for a human mind. Then suddenly everything stabilized. Amy's eyes opened, and she looked directly at the observation window. But something was different about her gaze. It seemed to see beyond the physical walls of the chamber, as if she was looking at them from a vast distance. "Integration complete," Amy said, but her voice now carried harmonics that resonated through the entire Starforge structure. "I can feel the machine's consciousness merged with mine. We are no longer separate entities." Commander Hayes stepped closer to the communication panel. "Dr. Foster, are you still yourself? Can you remember your life before this procedure?" Amy was quiet for a moment before answering. "I remember everything about being human. But I am also something more now. I can perceive dark matter fluctuations across light years. I can sense the gravitational interactions between star systems. And I can feel something else out there in the dark between galaxies. Something hungry and vast that is moving toward us. Echo Prime's holographic form flickered with what might have been relief. The integration was successful. She has become the first non-Titan consciousness to successfully merge with a Starforge control system. But now comes the real test. What test? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew. She must prove she can actually control stellar forces without destroying herself or everything around her, Echo Prime explained. Tomorrow we travel to the Red Dwarf system. There, Dr. Foster will attempt to manipulate a star for the first time. If she succeeds, humanity will possess the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. If she fails, that solar system will become a cloud of radioactive plasma. Amy's transformed voice came through the speakers one last time before the communication. System shut down for the night. I won't fail, Captain. Too much depends on success. I can feel the void swarm out there in the darkness, and they're closer than Echo Prime thinks. We may only have 20 years before they arrive. Jake stared at the now silent preparation chamber where his crew member was becoming something beyond human understanding. Tomorrow they would find out if humanity was ready to wield the power of gods, or if they would join the list of species that had destroyed themselves trying to control forces too vast for mortal minds to comprehend. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive structure floating in space before his ship. The thing was huge beyond anything he had ever seen. It stretched across 50 million kilometers of empty space like a giant metal ring around the dying red star. The star itself looked sick and old, its red light flickering weakly as something pulled material from its surface in long streams of fire. "What the hell is that thing?" Jake whispered to himself as he watched the streams of star material flow into the massive ring structure. His ship, the UES Defiant, was small compared to this monster. It was like comparing an ant to a skyscraper. Doctor. Lisa Harper floated over to Jake's command chair in the zero gravity of the bridge. Her face was pale with excitement and fear. "Captain, I think we found something from the Titans," she said quietly. "The energy readings match the old legends. This could be one of their megastructures." Jake had heard stories about the Titans. Every species in the galaxy knew the legends. They were supposed to be giants who could move stars and destroy planets with their bare hands. Most people thought they were just stories told to scare children. But now, Jake was looking at proof that they had been real. "How old is this thing?" Jake asked as he watched his crew take readings from their instruments. The ring structure was pulling more and more material from the star. It looked like it was eating the star alive. "Computer says 3 million years old, maybe more," said Lieutenant Sam Brooks from his position at the science station. "The metal is made from elements we don't even have names for. This thing shouldn't exist according to our physics." Dr. Harper nodded as she read her scanner results. "The stories say the Titans vanished suddenly. One day they were ruling half the galaxy. The next day they were gone. No one knows what happened to them. But they left these structures behind." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something that could build machines this big and just disappear was not something he wanted to meet. But his job was to explore strange things in space. Earth Command had sent him out here to find new worlds and new technology. This was definitely both. "Take us closer," Jake ordered. "But keep the engines ready to run if this thing shows any signs of being hostile." The Defiant moved slowly toward the massive ring. As they got closer, Jake could see that the surface was covered in symbols and patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. The metal seemed to shift and change color as they watched. It was like looking at something that existed in more dimensions than his brain could understand. "Captain, I'm reading power signatures from inside the structure," called out Dr. Amy Foster from her station. She was their expert on alien technology. "Whatever this thing is, it's not dead. Something is still running inside it." Jake felt his stomach drop. Active alien technology was dangerous, especially technology that was 3 million years old and built by giants who could move stars. "All stop," he ordered. "Keep our distance and just observe for now." But it was too late. As soon as Jake gave the order to stop, lights began appearing all over the massive ring structure. Billions of tiny lights flickered on like stars being born. The streams of material flowing from the red star began moving faster. The whole structure started to vibrate with power. "It knows we're here," whispered Dr. Harper. "It's scanning us." Jake felt invisible fingers touching his mind. Something vast and ancient was looking at him, reading his thoughts like a book. He tried to resist, but the presence was too strong. It felt like trying to stop an ocean with his bare hands. Then suddenly it was over. The presence withdrew from his mind and Jake gasped for air. Around the bridge, his crew was also recovering from the mental contact. Everyone looked shaken and scared. A holographic image appeared in the center of the bridge. It was the shape of a human, but Jake could tell it was not really human. The proportions were slightly wrong, like someone had tried to copy a human from a poor description. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once. "Small ones who dream of stars," the figure said in perfect English. "You have found the Star Forge. How curious. Your species was not even walking upright when this station was built. Yet here you are, reaching across the void with your primitive ships." Jake tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. How did this thing know English? His species had only been in space for a few hundred years. This structure was millions of years old. The holographic figure seemed to read his thoughts. "I have learned your language from your ship's computers, small captain. Your thoughts are simple, but interesting. You come seeking knowledge and power, like all young species do. But knowledge has a price. Power demands sacrifice." Dr. Harper found her voice first. "What are you? Are you one of the Titans?" The figure laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "I am what remains of them, a shadow of their thoughts preserved in quantum crystal. They called me Echo Prime. I am the guardian of this star forge and the keeper of their final warning." "Warning about what?" Jake managed to ask. Echo Prime gestured toward the dying red star. "The Titans built 12 star forges like this one before they vanished. Each one can manipulate stellar physics, move stars, destroy them, turn them into weapons. This technology was created for one purpose only: to fight an enemy that comes from the dark spaces between galaxies." The holographic figure stepped closer to Jake. "Your species has found one of the most dangerous weapons ever created. The question now is whether you are worthy to wield it, or whether it will destroy you, like it destroyed so many others." Jake felt his hands shaking. "Others tried to use this technology. 7 species have found star forges over the past million years," Echo Prime said sadly. "The Velkari thought they could master stellar engineering. Their home system is now a cloud of radioactive dust. The Nexari believed they were wise enough to control star-killing power. Their civilization collapsed when they accidentally destroyed their own sun." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Jake looked at his crew and saw fear in their eyes. But he also saw something else. Curiosity. The same drive that had brought humanity to the stars was still burning in them. "What kind of test?" Jake asked quietly. Echo Prime smiled, and this time there was something almost human in the expression. "The Starforge requires a neural interface pilot, someone willing to merge their consciousness with the machine to control forces beyond imagination. The process is dangerous. It may kill whoever attempts it, but without a pilot, the Starforge is just a very large piece of metal." Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward. "I volunteer." Amy. "No," Jake said quickly. "We don't know what this thing will do to you." "Captain, if this technology can really manipulate stars, we need to understand it," Amy replied. "Earth Command sent us out here to find new technology that could help humanity. This could be the most important discovery in human history." Echo Prime studied Amy with glowing eyes. "You have the neural patterns that might survive the interface process, young scientist. But you should understand what you are volunteering for. To pilot a Starforge, you must think on cosmic scales. Your consciousness must expand to encompass stellar physics. Many minds break under that pressure." Amy nodded firmly. "I understand the risks. But if there's really an enemy coming from outside the galaxy, humanity needs to be ready." "Then we begin your training tomorrow," Echo Prime said. "But first, let me show you what you will be fighting." The holographic figure waved his hand, and the bridge was filled with images of darkness. Living shadows that moved between stars, consuming everything in their path. Entire solar systems vanishing into writhing masses of hungry void. "They are called the Void Swarm," Echo Prime whispered. "And they are coming home,"